Welcome to NACD BoardVision, where leading boardroom advisors, governance professionals, and seasoned directors discuss critical issues related to your responsibilities in the boardroom.
Welcome to BoardVision. I'm Christopher Clark, publisher of NACD Directorship magazine. And today we're going to focus on the other side of compensation. We have a tendency to always talk about executive compensation, but today we're going to drill down on director compensation. I'm joined today by Jan Koors, Managing Director of Meyer Partners. Welcome, Jan.
Thank you for inviting me, Chris. I'm happy to be here.
What critical issues jump out at you in terms of nuggets from the report? And then let's talk a little bit later about trends.
The two noteworthy things that I saw come out of this year's report were on the issue of compensation for committees, where we've seen an indication of some pretty significant changes in structure. And then the second issue that I think is noteworthy is an issue around board composition.
Okay. I want to drill down a little bit more on this balancing of pay. Have we come back to the future a little bit? Can you flesh that out?
Well, first we have to start with a bit of a history lesson. If you go back in time to pre-Sarbanes-Oxley, most compensation for committees and boards was the same for every board member. You saw cash compensation, equity compensation, meeting fees. What happened with Sarbanes-Oxley is we saw that first tier breakout with differentiation for audit committees given the workload. Then over time we've seen comp committees get a bit of a premium over other committees as well. So we've moved to a situation where we've got a three-tiered committee compensation structure. Audit committees, then compensation committees, then nom-gov committees, and other standing committees.
What other competing forces, catalysts, could change this?
Well, that really speaks more to the trends we saw in overall compensation levels. If you'll think back 2 years ago, as we came out of the financial downturn, we saw some pretty significant double-digit increases in director pay year over year. This past year, director compensation increased modestly, mid-single digits. And in fact, the top 200 director comp at median stayed relatively flat. There's an issue around, there's always these competing forces around directors are working harder, it's tougher to get directors because they can sit on fewer boards at a time. On the flip side though, you've got a moderating force on director compensation that keeps those levels more from increasing so much, which is really around the issue of the independence of directors. And do you get to a point where director compensation gets so high that it brings into question the independence of board members? So I think there are a couple of competing forces here, one that would tend to push director comp up year over year, and one that's going to moderate those increases.
Are there differences between small, medium, and large companies, or are these findings and trends, do they hold relatively true regardless of size?
At this point, this is just the tip of the iceberg. We're starting to see this trend only at the top 200 breakdown, but in our experience, what you see at the top 200 in 1 year trickles down as a trend over the smaller companies over time.
If you were to pull one key nugget for directors to listen to today, what would it be?
The one key point that I think is most noteworthy is this notion that we're seeing companies move away from committee-based compensation in favor of simply larger retainers for board service and getting rid of that three-tiered system where audit committee members get the most, then comp committee members are paid the second highest, and nominating, governance, and other committees end up being the third group.
Jan, this was a great episode of BoardVision, if I do say so myself. On behalf of NACD, thank you for coming today.
Thank you.
Of note, the compensation report by Meyer Partners and NACD is on our website in a free download for our members. I'm Christopher Clark, and this is BoardVision.